Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm going to walk you through the manufacturing sales and just give you an overview of the perspective of what's happening in manufacturing North America with an emphasis on Canada and the U.S. Now, my presentation is only one perspective. You're more apt to go out to the Purchasing Manager Index, both U.S. and Canada, as well as look at what various banks say about manufacturing, as well as any trade associations to kind of get a different perspective, and especially on policy or what's happening in a particular segment. Here's a little brief bio about myself. I'm a professional accountant by trade. I emphasize solutions. I'm looking at government policies, also economic trends that will drive how companies kind of build financial solutions or just reporting in general in terms of as they move forward. I'll talk about Canadian manufacturing, its trends, and I'll talk about the US, and I'll also talk a bit about automation and what's happening. Now, you can't start or talk without talking about GDP growth rates. From 2016 going on for probably the next 4 or 5 years, we're seeing periods of slow growth. That means two reasons are happening. We have slow growth issues in China, which is a leading manufacturing. We also have a change in demographic shift in the G20 countries as we have an older population. They're spending less money, and we have that new generation Y entering the workforce that's taking its time in terms of spending and getting established. That's driving in terms of consumer spending. It's consumer spending that drives 2/3 of the economy. Commodity index just gives you an idea that the raw materials aspect for a lot of companies is being impacted of this. Now, some of this is being offset by changes in currency because we've seen a strong US dollar over the same period of time as well. Now, let's look at Canadian manufacturing. Now, Canadian manufacturing in general is led by 3 buckets: transportation, food processing, forestry. They seem to be picking up the slack where energy is down. Now, that being said, transportation sector is on considerable pressure. We have a couple banner years, so we may see a bit of a clawback, and that impacts areas like Ontario and Quebec, as they typically are the areas where you see a lot of the automotive activity. The other thing that you're seeing is forestry is relatively strong, but it's going to face some pressures because we have a softwood lumber deal that needs to be renegotiated, and the bulk of our exports in terms of lumber, a lot of it goes to the used housing starts in the US. So as we see that develop, that may have some impact. Food processing is another area we're seeing growth and development, especially as we see more trade deals come in play. It's another area to watch out for. When we look at capacity, we've seen a few months in the past 4 or 5 where we've seen a contraction. So we've seen growth rates below what the 50, which indicates a growing economy. We've seen that slack pick up in March. Now, the key indicator, is that a one-off thing, or is it a considerable amount of growth that we're seeing in terms of capacity being added? The U.S. itself is such a diverse economy, and you got different areas in play. They're impacted from the oil and gas sector downturn as well as Canada, and they've got a huge automotive sector that seems to be growing, but there's been a bit of a clawback. But the transportation sector in general in the U.S., from trailers to Class 8 trucks to automotive manufacturing, it seems to be relatively still strong. It may claw back a little bit, but it still seems to be one of the banner sectors in the U.S. They also will see issues with forestry as well to support their housing starts, and food processing as well. Now, the high-tech area in terms of computer chips and all that seems to be a bit of a downturn or a sluggish area of time because we're seeing less demand for iPhones, less demand for PCs, and that's all driving the chip manufacturing. That's something to bear in mind as well. Now, U.S. capacity is hovering around 75%, so we're 25% below, and that seems to be a consistent number. So there's a lot of slack still in manufacturing in the U.S. that you need to bear in mind. Now, you cannot start and talk about manufacturing unless you talk about automation. Okay, there's key drivers happening in manufacturing across North America. Visualization of data. This is a big issue now as we become more apt to looking at analytics, big analytic data. We're basically looking at that. We're looking at cheap oil gas sector, which is another critical aspect that's driving it. 3D printing is starting to become very critical in terms of driving processes, and we're seeing more and more of this stuff becoming mainstream now, but it's an area to continue to watch as it develops. Software as a service, more and more companies are going to cloud offerings. That's something to bear in mind. And then you're seeing some other things that moved over from online learning, remote access, buying online, wireless sensor. Buying online, that's e-commerce, so we're seeing a lot more in terms of B2B. Okay. Now I'll take it the next step further. They're not highlighted in here, but they're areas that they need to be understood. We're seeing more app with robotics. We're seeing more use of drones coming into play for distribution or modernization of warehousing, and that's all part of moving parts around. Laser welding is another area that seems to be growing. So automation is still a key area that's driving a lot of what's happening in manufacturing. Now, a lot of those trends like robotic and laser welding have been around for a while, but you're seeing more uptick as companies are looking to maximize their way of getting their throughput through is looking at efficiency in terms of productivity. Now, here's some other links that you'll tie into the overall manufacturing sector that you're more apt to go watch out for, and that's getting into capital investments, looking at the cash, looking at nearshoring, look at retail sales trends, because you have to get the big picture of this. So this kind of gives you an idea when you're looking at things that are going on in the economy to see what needs to be targeted in terms of your upselling opportunities, or just looking at your investment portfolio, or just looking at consumer pricing in general, because it's always good to know what's going on in the economy. This presentation was to give you a quick overview of manufacturing. I didn't go in all aspects of competitiveness. I just looked at the trends just to kind of give you an idea where if you want to dig a little bit further, it gives you that opportunity. Thank you.